Perfect. So welcome all through our Office Hours webinar series. This is the 5th one in 4 weeks. So welcome. And today we have Olessia, and the topic is overcoming proposal writer's block. As you know, the proposal clock is ticking, pressure is building as the deadline is getting closer, and as soon as the stress becomes palpable, you still have hard time squeezing the words from you and your proposals into your paper. You produce something by the deadline because you have to, but you know that you have to produce the same proposal document earlier. You would have a chance to make it so much better and much more likely. We have seen the situations coming all the time. So in this talk, Olessia will talk us through what some 24 techniques for combating the proverbial, what we call writer's block, to help you and your proposal team get through your writing as much faster with not less stress. And I know Olessia for a long time. So a quick 1 or 2 lines about Olessia. So Olessia is an A.P.M.P. Fellow. She's been in the industry for 20 plus years. She's president of OST Global Solutions and has won 20 billion plus tenders for her clients. Previously served as a president for National Contracts Management Association, and also for 2 years as president for the A.P.M.P NCA chapter. People know was one of the very first chapters to be founded in A.P.M.P. Again, prior to supporting hundreds of Fortune 500 companies and small businesses as a proposal consultant and growing OST, she also worked previously for Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and wrote for Financial Times of London. So there we are, Olessia. Welcome to our Office Hours webinar. It's all yours, Olessia. Take us through.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Bhaskar. Always a joy to work with you. Hi, everyone. So let's go ahead and talk about overcoming the proposal writer's block. Very quickly about us, we are a business development, capture, and proposal company. We do everything, but we also have a bid and proposal academy. We have first in the US a registered apprenticeship in business development, as well as public and corporate courses in all aspects of federal business development foundations in advance. So let's jump straight into it. A lot of people kind of have myths about writing in general and proposal writing in specific, and a lot of people don't believe that they're a good writer, right? So they're in this field, they've gotten into this field, and they're kind of dreading the writing piece, right? So proposal writing does not require exceptional talent. Maybe best-selling novel writing does, but proposal writing doesn't. And passion in proposals is not conveyed through the Hemingway-like vocabularies, right? Or prose or, lyrics. It's not the clever wording. It's all about the clear plans, customer knowledge, facts, and proof. And a lot of the times what I see with people is negative self-talk about their writing abilities. And, negative self-talk prevents us from everything good in life, right? A lot of the times we have imposter syndrome. We have all kinds of issues where we tell ourselves we can't, therefore we can't. But here, really, I've seen that a lot in proposal teams. Maybe not you, but it may be the people you're working with who are actually succumbing to that sort of negative self-talk, and that's what's preventing them from being successful. So what I tell people is, look, most everyone who's really smart with critical thinking abilities questions and criticizes themselves a lot, because you know what good looks like, right? And you don't need to get to the root of it. Just recognize that voice in your head whenever you're berating yourself and decide to silence it whenever it comes up. And you can do it temporarily. You can say, hey, for this next 30 minutes, I'm not going to tell myself my stuff is going to suck, right? And then I go ahead and do that to my heart's content afterwards. So essentially, it's good to say, hey, I don't really need to be that good in order for me to put that plan down, because I'm just communicating and we're just doing a technical communication kind of shtick. So what I tell people also, when you work with your writers or you are struggling with writer's block yourself, you need to kind of get down to the specifics, which is the only way to really help. So what I ask people is, what do you or your writer specifically dislike about writing? And there are lots of things to dislike, right? So some people dislike the typing itself because they're just too slow, right? So your thoughts are fast, your typing doesn't catch up with that, and you're constantly frustrated because you already ran away in your thoughts somewhere and you're still typing that first paragraph. Or putting thoughts into words. You have lots of thoughts, lots of good ideas, but they seem to fly all over the place and nothing gets written down. Some people struggle with the effort of organizing the ideas into logical order. So that is where essentially you are going to be in a situation where you drown in different ideas and content. You don't know how to sequence them. This is especially bad when you're cutting and pasting boilerplate, old proposal material into the new one and trying to wade through that and shape it the right way. That is the worst thing for you to do. You need to actually kind of start with a brainstorming technique like mind mapping, for example. So to go ahead and organize everything and know what you're going to say in what sequence and then say. Also, the writing is not well connected to what you're trying to say. So if the writing is not well connected to what you're trying to say, then a lot of the times you want to kind of talk to somebody else and try to explain it to them and maybe do that voice to text kind of app that would accompany what you're trying to say and explain it. And then you're able to kind of wade through that and delete anything that's extraneous. Now, some people may be appearing to be padding to fill the pages after getting the basic idea across, right? So you're saying, hey, I can really say this into paragraphs. Why do I have to write 3 pages about this? A lot of the times what really happens here is you haven't brainstormed enough. So what I tell people, look, when you're brainstorming on proposals, you need to answer 7 questions, or I call them also 8 W's, because there's 7 questions, but there are 8 W's. It's why, what, who, how, when, where, and how, right? And once you've answered all the questions, you have plenty of material to write about. Now, there are people who fail to find the right words. If you're that kind of person, you're much better off trying to start with a graphic, for example, where you can sequence things, or with a schedule, something that kind of becomes like a backbone of your section, a workflow, for example. So, and then try to describe that. And maybe don't be hung up on finding the right exact word, just describe the concept, because first draft is okay to be ugly, right? So in first draft, you can say pretty much anything, just get it down on paper and bake the cake all the way through. A lot of times people are seeing too many connections, so it is hard to structure the thoughts or to focus. So if you have that beautiful mind that absolutely is all over the place, right? So like it's a form of ADD or adult ADHD, right? Where you're just seeing so many connections and you're like, okay, how do I even organize that? Again, mind mapping the concepts, doing a graphic on those concepts, just kind of like a concept of operations, moving things around, seeing how they all fit together will help you tremendously. Also, the fear of seeming incompetent or not as smart when your section doesn't come out quite as intended, so you hide. I mean, you've seen the writers hide too, probably. They don't want to show you their stuff. And that's where you essentially, and I see there's some chat coming in that people are saying that, hey, for some are seeing too many connections and failing to find the right words. For some of the writers, is #1 issue. So the dread is a time suck. Absolutely. Thank you guys for chiming in. So when you are actually having this imposter syndrome where you don't want to show your writing, you need to understand, hey, a draft in progress has got to be ugly. What I tell people is, hey, you've got to free yourself from the requirement of looking perfect in your writing, because your draft is in every form of evolution, and your first draft should be absolutely ugly. In fact, you should rejoice in it being ugly, because you're trying to bake the cake fast, you're jam packing it with information and ideas, and it's not about the wordsmithing. It's not about presentation at that point. So also the dread of how long the writing takes and how much time this proposal is going to steal out of your life. I'm a huge fan of not trying to free up a whole weekend to work on stuff, or a whole day to work on stuff, or a whole evening to work on stuff. And a lot of you are in Europe. I don't know if you guys do that in the proposal world there. Here in the US, we work all the time, right? So nothing is sacred. Weekends are not sacred. Evenings are not sacred in proposal world. But if you structure your work correctly, you don't have to do that, because proposals are essentially a kind of thing that you can do in sections and segments of 20 minutes, half an hour here and there between your meetings. And I'm going to talk about different techniques of writing that are not going to even take the big chunks of time. All right, so there's 3 elements of the proposal speed writing system. So writing faster is a lot of the times also helping your sort of time management. You're not dreading how much time the proposal is going to be stealing out of your life. So the first one is psychology. Like I talked about, the negative voices, right? You need to change the counterproductive beliefs about your writing abilities. Literally, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right? So might as well believe that you can. So the other one is process. Learning and practicing the correct writing process is key. I'm going to talk about the steps in the correct writing process and the theory behind that. And the third one is actually leveraging the 21st century writing tools. Now we're in the third decade of the 21st century. And a lot of people are still thinking about writing as you and the keyboard, right? Or you and a pen. And there are many tools that are available to us to not be writing at all. So making sure that this is happening, and there's lots of different aids for you, and you take advantage of those aids, is really, really important. So let's talk about the theory of the brain, right? So as you know, there are centers in our brain, right? It's not really the hemispheres so much as the centers in different hemispheres, but for simplification purposes, we're going to refer to them as hemispheres, right? So like you have a left hemisphere dominant people and right hemisphere dominant people. So the left is where you have logical thoughts, right? You're sequential, you're rational, you're analytical, objective, you do things in order, and you're focused on specific parts. Centers in the right hemisphere are responsible for tasks that are creative, random, intuitive, holistic, synthesizing, subjective, and they're focused on wholes. So where do you guys think that majority of the sort of creative writing and brainstorming happens? So yeah, right, absolutely, Jennifer. So it's in the right hemisphere, in the right brain. Thank you, Aurora. So essentially, and then where do you think the editing happens, and the sequencing and the ordering of things? In the left. Yep. Thank you. And so what happens between the hemispheres of the brain is there are bridges, right? And the bridges are essentially what's called the corpus callosum. And those bridges are very narrow. And essentially, when you start mixing the tasks that go into the writing process or into the brainstorming process, you're stuck in a traffic jam. You're bumping into everything, just basically traveling from the information, the messages traveling from one hemisphere to the other. And you're stuck. Everything takes forever. An hour has passed and you have a paragraph down on paper. And it's really, really tough to write that way. So what I tell people, look, in a correct writing process, there are at least 3 major phases. The first one is research and brainstorming, right? And when you figure out what you're going to say, then there's the writing part, where you actually write down your first draft, and where you have the rewriting and editing. And on proposals, you sort of rough combination. And Rita, to answer your question, the first time I hear there are bridges between them, it's called the corpus callosum. Google it. And there are bridges. I'm not sure if they're like synapses or not. I'm not up on my gross anatomy so much, but what happens is, those are the kind of bridges that allow us to multitask really well. The multitasking I'm talking about is not sitting on a toilet and reading the newspaper, right? So, but actually doing things in really fast sequences. And our ability to multitask actually depends on the width of that bridge. And women have wider bridges naturally, and so they're much better multitaskers than most men. Although, you know, if you take like a pilot of a modern jet, military jet, you'll see that they're multitaskers galore. So it's a gross sort of generalization, but generally women have an advantage there naturally because they have broader bridges between the hemispheres. So research and brainstorming, writing and rewriting and editing. And essentially your writing portion should, you know, cost you about 20% of your effort, max. Everything else is polishing, making sure that you put your compliance items in, you really punch up the prose, you put your facts in and everything else. So these three distinct stages, when they're skipped or tackled out of order, they make writing painful and time consuming. So you want to make sure that you're not doing them simultaneously, right? So when you generate ideas and brainstorming, you're not also ordering those ideas and critiquing them. When you're writing, you're also not rewriting and editing at the same time. So that you're not in a position where you wrote a sentence, you went and edited that, deleted a few words, added a few words, got it perfect, put a period, then you on to the next sentence. I don't know if you have heard of anybody writing like that or write like that yourself because you're a perfectionist, but that's really, really difficult. And mixing of those stages is the mother of all writer's block because of how narrow the bridges are between the hemispheres. So a lot of the times people resort to procrastination to prevent yourself from doing proposal work. I have one on my website, the OST website. We have OSTGlobalSolutions.com free resources, proposal procrastination flowchart. Here's a link. You can download that for yourself, and it just tells you about all the stuff that you will do before you get to actually doing proposal work. It also helps me sort of realize realistically that there'll be people on my proposal team that will be engaging in that behavior as well. So get that. And let's talk about other resources while we're talking about different resources. I'm going to share with you this really cool special discount that we have, which is Thank You 2021. It's a 35% off code valid through 12/24/2021, basically the Christmas Eve. And you can find all of our different courses and products, recorded product self-paced courses at this link. So the class where I'm getting this material from is really cool. It's federal proposal writing. Yes, it's aimed at government proposals in the United States, but the principles are still exactly the same. So it's not, you know, if you're not in the United States, it will still apply to you. So we're going to actually cover in day one is making your sections compliant and structuring your outline so that it is compelling from the get-go. Then we talk about mastering 3 elements of the proposal speed writing system in detail that we talked about today. Then integrating advanced elements of persuasive writing like story and metaphor into your proposals so that your proposals come alive and are more persuasive. We're also going to talk about using persuasive structure and good proposal language. And then we're going to talk about editing and polishing your text using helpful tools, techniques, and automation for these tasks. So how do you break free from the writer's block and help your proposal team? So this is what this class is about. And so the usual question, will you be sharing your presentation at the end? Absolutely, we'll be sharing the presentation at the end. And you're going to be able to listen to this webinar or share with your colleagues if you want them to listen to that later as well on Bhaskar's website. So how do you break free from the writer's block? Some of the techniques I'm going to share with you really fit different situations, and it may seem silly, but they actually really work. And I've tested them on myself. Because I'm not a huge fan of doing homework. At school, I was notorious for not doing my homework and always getting extensions from my professors. In the business of proposals, right? So you cannot get extensions unless you know the case is exceptional. So you have to do your homework, right? So don't get glued to your desk. What I tell people is you need to kind of take advantage of the mind-body connection when you're stuck, when you don't want to write. So the first technique is stimulate your physical state. We're really, you know, our minds reside in our bodies and they're dependent on so many different factors. For example, you know, if our blood is not circulating well, that's something that you need to fix. And the massage to improve circulation, a neck massage or something like that, that is really, really helpful. The one really cool thing here is this massager is a massage gun. It's kind of rough. So for anybody who's really, really tender, it's probably not a good thing, but this kind of breaks up the connective tissues between the muscles and really gets rid of a lot of your sort of occupational hazards that come with people sitting in front of their computers, hunching over, writing, and it's a really good sort of tool to have at your desk. Another one is doing the stretching exercises, right? So just try this out as you're sitting in front of your computer, stretch out, see if you can feel just how your absolute state changes when you do the stretching. So well, sometimes we're just stuck at our desks and we don't even want to move. I mean, some of you maybe actually even avoiding going to the bathroom, or you may be thirsty and not getting up to get a drink. This is how bad it gets. So want to make sure that you're constantly aware of your physical state. Another one is, right, our brain that we rely on when we write relies on oxygen. What happens when you sit around all the time? Oxygen doesn't get to your brain and you kind of get a little bit more stupid, basically, right? And it's not a good thing, right? And you don't want to do, you're unmotivated. You just really don't even want to move. It's like a mini depression that you get into when you sit behind your desk. Breathing exercise is sort of like, and there's lots of different techniques. You can, again, Google those different techniques, you know, like, hey, you know, you inhale on 4, you hold for 8, and then you exhale for 2. You know, there's all these different formulas where you do multiple exercises where you hold the air in your lungs, and you almost feel like the rush. Some of you can get even lightheaded when you do this, but you will see how much clearer you get to think after that. Another really cool technique is to go ahead and hypnotize yourself into writing. So when you don't want to work and nothing is really happening for you, get up, go for a walk or for a run. Apparently, a repetitive motion and circulation work miracles. So what I do is when I actually do this, I have actually a walking desk. Sometimes it is there to collect dirty dishes from me sitting on my couch and not getting myself up. But when I do, I feel so much different because that repetitive motion allows your brain to free up and start producing ideas. So what I do is I have a clipboard if I'm going for a walk, or better yet, there's a really cool app, Otter AI. And it's a voice to text app that actually uses punctuation, and it's pretty accurate. And I found it really good for interviewing proposal writers and also kind of getting your thoughts down as you walk. And if all else fails, get a background from a colleague. Don't get yourself in trouble for sexual harassment. So don't give anything unwanted. Like here, it's an old picture of George Bush and German counselor, I always found it really funny how it's a very American thing to go ahead and just do a little squeeze, especially like when it was done a decade or so ago, a decade and a half ago, when it was still pretty common, friendly gesture, but it was not very welcome. So, but if somebody, a family member, for example, a lot of us work from home, if a family member can give you a background, that stuff works, or you can just pay somebody to do that, right? Now, do not succumb to going stir crazy. A lot of us are just like so stuck in our environment, right? And this is where we go to work. This is where we do work. And after a while, we like change. Humans like change, right? So changing the environment is your friend if you're stuck. So what I tell people, if you're stuck and don't want to write, get away from the routine. Get away from working behind your desk. I used to, back in the day, I didn't have a couch in my office where I really tend to sit most of the time, which is not the healthiest for my posture because my walking desk is, but I don't always use it like I should. So to confess, but I would sit down and actually work on the floor. And I remember one time we have interns in the office, and one intern was walking by, and I see just his eyes just like widen and go really round when he saw me just sitting on the floor and going like, Olessia, what are you doing? I was like, I was having writer's block, and now I'm just writing away because I had to just get up from my desk and sit down on the floor so that I don't feel like I'm actually working. So just avoid the danger of falling asleep as you get yourself in comfy environments like a comfy couch. And this is George Costanza sleeping under the desk. Right, so fans of Seinfeld will appreciate that. Work outside. So a lot of you now have computers that actually have enough lumens to go ahead and light up your screen so you can see what's going on. Like I'm sitting outside, for example, and it's really, really nice outside, so I can work outside and enjoy myself, and I get more fresh air because the indoor air is not very conducive to getting oxygen to your brain. Another one is work in a restaurant and a eatery, in the cafeteria. A lot of us have this thing where our brains get distracted if we are focusing on just one task. But if we naturally distract them with a background kind of noise, right? So when we have people coming and going and everything else, our brains are sort of tracking everything that's going around us, but they're focusing on a task. Also, you know that you're not there forever. You're time blocking it naturally. Hey, you know, how long can you really sit in a cafeteria or coffee shop, right? So coffee shop or a library, you're going there for a limited amount of time. Your brain knows it's going to end, therefore you focus a lot better. Another one is create a Zen setting dedicated to work only in your home. A lot of us are working from home due to the pandemic. So create a spot where you've kind of set up an environment. I don't know, candles, nice stuff, right? So something that's really pleasant for you to be at. So someplace where you are comfortable doing your work. And the only thing that I'm going to kind of give you a word of warning on is remove distractions when you're working from home, because it's so easy to just go ahead and start, I don't know, video gaming or watching TV or doing laundry. But everybody's probably a veteran of this whole teleworking thing by now. Another one is your blood chemistry, right? So you need to alter your blood chemistry the healthy way. So, or almost healthy, depending on who you ask. And I'm not talking about coffee, right? So we all know the shortcuts, but what's the way to get energy foods to alter your state, right? So like you essentially can eat high protein, low sugar snacks. Sugar will make our blood spike and then we crash, and it's very short-lived, right? So anything like that, right? So but avoid proposal staples, pizza, cookies, chips, something that's easy to get, doesn't take much time because we're so distracted, and therefore later on we pay the price. You know, green shakes, I'm a huge fan of green shakes. I just had a huge one this morning that you add protein to, all the good stuff, and it keeps your energy at a good level. And you can use yummy stuff to assign rewards and consequences, right? So you get a cake if you get finished with the section, and you don't if you don't, right? So that's something that really helps, because if you are a foodie and you love your food so much, like as much as I do love my food, because God knows I really, really love my food. So that's a very effective way of kind of rewarding yourself. So another trick is to trick your mind that you're not writing a proposal. So self-deception, they're really actually completely on a tangent. There's like 5 forms of lying that people use, and they say an average person lies about 50 to 90 times a day. So the first type of lie is self-deception. So self-deception is when you lie to yourself. Rita is like, coffee. Yes, coffee. So my big thing is chocolate. I use Lily's chocolate. I know where if it's sold outside of the United States, but it actually has stevia in it and sugar alcohol, so you're not really like getting a lot of sugar with that, and it is still really delicious. So that's a Lily's brand, and they have it everywhere here in the US. I don't know if they export it to the UK. So back to lying. I was not lying about Lily's. I love that stuff. So self-deception is the first form of lying. The other form of lying is actual lying when you're, telling the untruth. Then there's the BS, and that is where you're basically exaggerating things and distorting them to fit your story. And then you have the fifth form, which is not lying, which is openness. And openness essentially is, lying by omission. There's a fourth form of lying, is lying by omission, actually not telling anything to people when you should be telling, probably disclosing stuff. And then the fifth form of communication is openness, when you're being open and honest. And why am I talking about lying is because you can lie to yourself, though. Self-deception is really, really good, and it's very helpful. Sometimes it's really being helpful to your writing. You're not seeing anything on the screen? That's interesting. How long has that been going on? So can you guys see my screen okay?
It's just this slide, Olessia. The other slides are all good.
Just this slide?
Yeah.
All right. So like now?
It's fine now. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. So you can trick your mind. You can lie to yourself, and you actually can use that propensity of humans to lie to your advantage. So you want to control your own mind and use that as a serial strength. So write by hand. Sometimes when you're not typing, you're not doing work's associated with typing, writing by hand is associated with, I don't know, journaling or doing something pleasant or doing something you've forgotten, almost like a forgotten skill. And you could also dictate into a smartphone recording app, voice to text app, or your laptop recording program. So Dragon, naturally speaking, is a really neat tool. And this especially works for people who have foreign accents, right? So like a lot of these tools are made in the English speaking countries. And Dragon, what's really cool about Dragon is you can train your Dragon to recognize your way of saying things. And after you invest some time into training it, and there's literally people who will teach you how to do that, you're able to have 99.9% accuracy of the voice recognition for your own voice, and you can just get away from typing altogether. So for that annoyance with writing, if typing, the speed of typing is your impediment, you type like 60 words per minute. How fast do we speak? How fast do we speak, do you think, guys? How many words per minute do we say? Does anybody know how fast we speak? Let's see. So 100, that's a very slow spoken person, 100, right? So when you're very slow and deliberate, or culturally, it's in your region where people speak slower, then you're at 100. Bhaskar can rap at 300 words per minute. Now, it's an average sort of like good speed for speaking is about 150 words per minute, 140, 150 words per minute. But imagine this is like at least twice as fast as a fast typist. When you're at 75 words per minute, you're pretty professional typist, right? So you can take pretty good detailed notes. Now, someone's here saying that I would disagree on the Dragon. I've done my dissertation on the original version and it was useless, but now it's incredibly good. However, I can still not use it since it's so satisfactorily. I'm not a native speaker of English. That's interesting. So right now, the modern Dragon blew my mind when I actually tried it. And there's also an app called Dragon Anywhere on the phone. And that really helps. I'm also not a native speaker of English, as you can actually hear an accent. And sometimes when I'm tired, especially, my accent is very pronounced. And it has really helped me to train the Dragon. So, all right. So Pretend that you're writing an email to a friend is another opportunity here. Pretend that you called your friend to report a juicy gossip too. So you can actually tell yourself, hey, you know, address it, start typing it in your email. Make sure that your email saves drafts automatically so that you don't lose your work. So sometimes writing an email is much easier than writing a proposal. Also, do not start writing in the beginning of the section. You can start writing in the middle of the section or at the end, whichever part is easiest, because there's a warm-up that we need with everything, and writing is just the same. You literally can physically start warming up your fingers for typing, and it gets you warmed up. I mean, even when giving this webinar, you'll see that a lot of people who do webinars, if they have not warmed up in advance, they will start a little bit slower and then get much more energetic towards the middle. We are wired like that, right? So humans need a warm-up. So start writing in the middle or the end where it's easy, and then go to the difficult parts afterwards. Don't tackle the difficult parts first. You could also recruit a family member to interview you and do a mock interview. Sometimes it's easier to actually talk to somebody. Some people really have trouble talking to an app, right? You have to kind of train yourself, but talking to someone, even if they don't understand what you're talking about, is a really cool thing. Actually, a great question on what was the last time you wrote a handwritten letter to someone? I cannot even remember when that was. That's embarrassing. I've written a card to somebody just recently, and my writing has become really atrocious. And thank you, Rita, saying good tip on starting in the middle or the end. Sometimes you get stuck in the beginning, but there are lots of sections that you could write easily. Correct. I absolutely agree with you. All right, so another one of my favorites is managing your writing time. So again, do not set up hours for your writing. Stop dreading your writing because it should not take you hours. So what I tell people is purchase a kitchen timer or use a timer app on your laptop or smartphone. Why do I like kitchen timers, right? So your iPhones all come equipped, or iPhones, sorry, smartphones. Sorry, Android people there, if you're, or other brands. I don't even know if they exist, right? I'm an iPhone person, but don't hate me for it. So there is an app here, but sometimes that's sort of the kitchen timer that will buzz is a physical thing you have there. It's kind of a physical representation of a deadline. Sometimes it even ticks, and that ticking can be sort of calming, saying, hey, it's all gonna come to the end. So that is sometimes a very handy kind of tool, like a Pomodoro kind of timer. And productive writing is done in smaller chunks of time in between your other tasks. So 15 to 20-minute intervals, they work best for intense writing without checking email or answering phones. Just unplug, do your writing, get back to whatever you need to do. And it's another way to trick your mind, to play that mind game with yourself. You will have an easier time starting because it's no longer a daunting task. You can do anything for 15, 20 minutes. You can suffer for 15, 20 minutes through the writing. And then once you're done, you're done. So sometimes you will not want to stop because you're too into it. Now you're on a roll. You're in the groove. So go ahead and continue doing that. Now let's talk about something that people get stuck on a lot of the times when they're writing, and that is BS, right? So the form of lying called BS, and there's language that we feel that we have to put in a proposal that kills persuasion. That's just the opposite of what we want to do. And that is trying to find the right adjectives and adverbs to sell in your proposal writing. So, yep. So we have the premier, world class, seasoned. What is seasoned? I don't know. Well seasoned. Experienced, best of breed, best of class, industry leader, leading provider, leading or cutting edge, state of the art, all of these things, just forget about them. Write in nouns and verbs. Adjectives or adverbs make your proposal salesy, insincere, and suspect. And the effect is just the opposite of trust. These adjectives are overused, not believable. Don't try to embellish your writing, just stick with the facts. And it just makes it much easier. Also, gems like, we will leverage our experience, right? Instead of saying this, explain exactly what you will do and how your past experience will be useful, right? What does it prove? And don't leave it as an empty claim like most proposals do, where it will come across salesy, because, you know, there's lots of sentences, like the bad proposal language sentences that people do across, like whether they've talked to each other or not, or whether they've taken classes or not. There's bad habits that are out there. Another one is, we understand. Most proposals state that you understand something and move on to the next topic, creating an unsubstantiated claim. You didn't prove it. You didn't explain what exactly you understood. And if the understanding is demonstrated, you don't need to say we understand. And to illustrate this concept to you guys is kind of one example, right? So let's say that a young lady comes to an interview. She's about maybe 20, 21 years old. And the hiring manager is coming in 15 minutes late, all flustered, hair messed up, right? Lipstick smudged on her teeth. And she's got coffee in her hands and kind of this crazy look. And she says, I'm so sorry. I was getting my kids out the door, and it's always such a hassle. I have 3 kids, and I really apologize for being late. And here's this 20, 21-year-old young woman saying, it's okay, I understand. What effect is she really producing on that hiring manager? What do you think that the hiring manager, what's the first reaction of the hiring manager? All right, so Aurora is laughing, right? So, the hiring manager right away probably feels that this person is a master of BS, right? So they're not very truthful, they're insincere, they're trying to brown nose, and right away the trust is being reduced, right? Now, let me say if the young lady replied differently. She said, oh, don't worry about it. I actually relate, because my mom died when I was 8, and my dad was raising us. I had 3 siblings, and every morning I was in charge of actually getting them out the door, and he had to make sure that all of their sandwiches are made correctly to their tastes and cut correctly, or just so, or otherwise they would eat them. And you made sure that everybody's dressed for the weather and have their backpacks packed. So yeah, I totally understand. So now all of a sudden you have connection, right? So now they're bonded. Most likely she's going to get the job because there's trust, because you explained specifically what it is that you understood. You don't even need to say the words, I understand. It's really that relatedness that we need to tell in a proposal. So another sort of technique here is to have more words to avoid using in a proposal, and it's rounding off or approximating quantities when you're writing your first draft. Don't get hung up on that, but put placeholders, X something, right? Approximately $1 million in savings does not sound better than 945,680, right? If you quantify your savings and they're less than $1 million, it will be actually more impressive when you essentially write them down and are precise, because it conveys to the customer that you're precise, you're not lazy, you've looked up the information, you have all your facts lined up. Also, in personal language, something will be done, passive voice. You need to say who is going to do something by position, by name. Too much technical jargon. Make sure that, when you technical subject matter experts write the proposal, you go through that and polish that proposal to ensure it's understandable for every level of reviewer. And the benefits are clear from doing things a specific way. So generalizations and statements not backed by facts and details. So when people say a number of, some, multiple, many, several, numerous, myriad, right? That means you did not look up the number you needed to look up, and go ahead and do yourself a favor and look it up, or put a placeholder when you do your draft. Just put an X, and you will be able to then go ahead and fill those out in your second pass or third pass. Another one is philosophical ruminations on lyrics. And that is, our philosophy is to recognize every employee for their achievements. We value, our mission is to, we're dedicated to, we believe, we feel, we think. It goes without saying that. Oh my goodness, right? So cut all that stuff out. You don't need to write like that, even if you first draft. I mean, first draft, if that's the way you talk, just write it to your heart's content, but then cut it out when you're doing your subsequent passes. So persuasion in proposals is authenticity, authority, and passion that come from stating how your expertise will benefit the customer and citing the facts to prove it. That's it. And finally, I'm going to talk about statements that sound fake, like the smile on this woman. And when you put into your proposal industry best practices or industry standard, and it's just there to inflate something that you're saying, you're not citing the actual best practices recorded somewhere or a specific standard that the industry uses, like NIST, for example, then you're actually putting stuff that shouldn't be in your proposal. Or we are customer focused. All those feel good words are, we're quality focused, top quality. Is there any other kind? We're committed to, sure. Full service. You know, there are gas stations that are full service where you don't have to get out to get gas. Uniquely qualified or unique, unless the request for proposal asks you for what is unique about your approach. You can use the word unique, but generally very few things are unique. Your discriminators are unique. Only you have that and nobody else. That's the only things that are unique. Don't use the word unique to make an unsubstantiated claim. Also, the right choice. Let the customer decide who is the right choice, or say trustworthy. We're a trustworthy partner, or you can trust our company too. It's like when you're in a store and a salesperson tells you, trust me. What is your first sort of inclination? You're going to trust them? What's your reaction if somebody tells you, trust me? Yep, you want to sell me something. Exactly. Your trust level goes down instantly. So that's how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pause here to see if you guys have any questions or any experiences or any specific struggles you have with writing. And I may be able to answer your questions. Or you struggle with getting people on your proposal team to give you the sections in time.
Let me start with few, Olessia. I've got a few directly to me. Yeah. Right. I leave the attendees to drop in the chat box. What's the one takeaway that they learned from this session?
All right, let's do that.
And then Olessia, I think there are a few questions that came time to me, and let me ask those things again. What you shared today, I think it's, as they say, common sense is not that common, right, Olessia? Because it's all these things that we need to do, but we don't do. So if you kind of there are 20 plus resources there, or the tips that you shared today, Olessia, from your experience, if you kind of pick up, hey, this is one thing worked for mind, this is one thing worked for body, this is one thing worked for writing, etc. Any that one thing that you suggest for people to say seriously consider this?
I would say my biggest sort of takeaway is the writing process. Understand that you need to figure out what to say before you say it, right? So a lot of people just start writing, and that's where they get stuck. Do your research, do your prep, do your brainstorming ahead of time. Use mind mapping techniques to brainstorm by yourself or in a group. So there is a question on, you mentioned the walking desk. What exactly is a walking desk? Great question. So, there's standing desks where you can adjust the height. You can sit at a desk, or you can just press a button and the thing just goes up. And there are manual ones too. And you can stand at it, because sitting is the new smoking, right? So you don't want to sit too much. It kind of kills you. And standing desks basically come sometimes with a treadmill that goes underneath. It does not have any handles or anything like that. And it's a treadmill that's designed to go for a long time at very low speeds. It's not like your running treadmill. It's specifically a walking treadmill. And there are lots of them in different price ranges. I got myself a really nice one. I always tell myself every day that I'm going to use it. Sometimes it's really hard for me to get up and actually use it, but it is a really cool tool. And when I do use it, I'm always happy. So now, is it ever okay to refer to the owner and client as you in the proposal? It's a weird thing, right? So you is sometimes can be too informal, right? So it's a very informal form of speech. So you need to know your client. And I reserve you to very rare occasions in the proposal where it's a really great benefit. And we can say it will benefit you and spell out this great benefit. And there will be no additional cost to that or something like that. And it's really impressive, and it kind of addresses people directly. On occasion, you can put that in. I'm not a huge fan of you because it's too informal, but sometimes it's very effective. So how do you get over the fear of writing on a proposal team when you're new to the company? It's this imposter syndrome, right? So like the imposter syndrome is when you're just basically worried that somehow you can be found out that you're not as smart as people thought. And I think it takes a lot of courage to present your stuff to others. So I would say run it by a colleague that you trust to make sure it's good, right? So just give you that confidence. Make sure that when you present stuff in the beginning, when people are just getting to know you, you have some of the basic things that are there, right? So you put it in the right templates, you take the desktop publishing class, understand how to work with Word and PowerPoint really well. And what alignment is, you always have the page numbers at the bottom, right? So you kind of dress it up correctly. You also tell people that the first draft is never perfect, and you tell people, you preface it with, hey, I have an ugly first draft to share with you, and sort of lower their expectations a little bit, right? So there's different techniques to do this, but yeah, it does really help when your team understands that drafts are never perfect, right? But Pulitzer prize winning journalists will do 18, 19, 20 drafts of an article before it goes out into print. Many of them. So you should not be expected to produce perfect stuff in a first cut. All right, so here's another question. If we have content from previous tenders that really fits the question, should we go through the writing process starting with brainstorming? So what I do with that situation, right? So if it's a product, a lot of the times if you have a tender on the same product with the same exact solution as the previous one, what I do with the brainstorming is actually critically looking at the material to see what fits. And I'm a big fan of recycling boilerplate material surgically. So think of it like a surgeon saying, hey, this sentence fits, this sentence doesn't, this fits, this doesn't, before you cut and paste it into the document. So you actually cut and paste a sentence, a paragraph, a graphic surgically by thinking through what actually fits or how it needs to be changed and what questions are we answering, instead of what I see a lot of people do is just dump the material into the proposal and now try to wade it through. And it's not quite exactly the same. It's not quite exactly answering the same question as this client at this time. So I would be very surgical about that. So when others don't take ownership of what they should be writing and deadlines and what the deadlines mean, I have to fill the gaps. It's deeply annoying, correct? So what I do, what I've found is offering people training on writing and on brainstorming. It's just-in-time training really helps because a lot of people lack the skills, and then you end up filling the gaps. In fact, I put this class together, writing persuasive federal proposals, it as a reaction to the fact that I had an inflatable mattress, and I was at Raytheon at the time, and I had an inflatable mattress that I kept at the office, and then I just dragged in a couch that I bought at the yard sale into the office and slept on that couch. Everybody else slept on that couch too. That couch cheated on me all the time. And how I knew is because I had this cover, the white cover, and it was always wrinkled in the morning when I walked into the office. Somebody would just be sleeping there overnight. Everybody was working really hard around the clock, and that was the culture. And I figured out a way to make it better by teaching my writers how to write better and overcoming the writer's block. Yeah, it was a bad couch. So let's see here. Did I miss any questions? From Aurora, there's a comment: I'm going to start setting aside shorter time to write instead of trying to block 2 hours to set it at 30 minutes and trying to break my habit of sitting behind my desk. That's a great takeaway from this class. So let's see. There's another new message. And love, turn off the negative self-critical comments, or at least temporarily. Yep. Great. All right, guys, if you want to share your takeaways, we have another couple of minutes, and then we're going to break.
Yes, continue to share your takeaways. In the meantime, as we always do in all our office hours webinar, here comes the scribble quiz to the people who stayed late and long and who also listened carefully. So let's go back to the 3 questions. What are the 8 W's that Olessia mentioned early on in the conversation? As you know, whoever gets the first answer, you can choose any of our workshop courses for absolutely free. So, but it's more like a fun. Just write down, whoever joined early on in the conversation, what are the 8 W's? Like who, what, then X, Y, Z. So 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think.
Yeah, it's 7 questions, 8 W's, because WOW has 2. So Aurora got it.
Good, Aurora. Yep. You're leading there. The second one. There was a question that was asked about the written words versus the spoken words, and I went completely off track. But what was the average or the number that Olessia mentioned is what's the number of words we speak? Wow, Jennifer, even before I finish it. Nice. So Jennifer,
right, guys.
That one. The last one is, I think there were 3 stages that Olessia mentioned while writing. The first one was research, second was writing, and there is a third one. What was the percentage for the writing that she suggested we should spend?
Yep.
No.
Great job.
It was 15%, right?
Oh, no, 20. 20. Everybody got it right.
Oh, my God. So I didn't listen and everybody did. So I think, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We will keep who got this one. I think we'll give it to Terry and Konstantinos both. So thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, the slides and the recording will be shared within 24 hours, including the access to discounts to all Olessia's classes, and free resources of Olessia will also be shared, part of the link. Hope you find the session useful. And we are back again in the new year with Dickies on Wordman is back to the webinar. That's on the 13th of January. And then we have a few more lined up. So at least 3 or 4 every month. That's the plan. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Olessia, for taking the time to sharing your resources. It was very, very useful, especially now when people are breaking for Christmas. I think even if they pick up one thing for their mind, body, and the way they write, they can take it to the new year and change from there. Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much, Olessia. Thank you
everyone.
for joining,
Take
and
care.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you.
Happy New Year.